Let's compare the QRD T3/T5 against the MOBAPAD M6 S. In front of me, I've got the MOBAPAD M6 S and the QRD T3, but the T5 is exactly the same, it just looks slightly different. And there is a reason I'm not comparing them against the MOBAPAD M6 HD, because these are quite a bit more expensive and these are better spec'd than all of the other ones. Whereas these two are very similar in spec. So spec-wise, we both have Hall effect sensing joysticks, so neither of them are going to develop drift at all, which is really, really cool. They both have mechanical switches. So we've got mechanical switches in the face buttons and in the triggers and bumpers as well. We both have standard rumble in these as well, not HD rumble. We both have assignable back pedals just here, which can have turbo, button swap, or macro assigned to them as well. We both have 6-axis gyro in them. This actually has NFC, whereas this one does not. This has a 6.5-hour battery life. The MOBAPAD M6 S just here has 15 hours, so over 2 times the battery life. However, this one just here obviously has RGB galore on it, so there's just RGB LEDs everywhere, but you can turn that off, whereas the MOBAPADs don't at all. We both have D-pads, which are swappable. So you've both got a dome dish style one, or the actual other ones just here, which are, you know, your standard kind of regular style D-pad as well. However, there is some differences, and that is the QRD obviously has a centerpiece, but not with a USB-C, so no. So you do have a centerpiece so that you can attach these and use these as a controller like this. So they are both wireless, if you hadn't gathered that already. So you can, use them like this. However, this one comes with a centerpiece. The MOBAPADs currently do not. So you do not get the centerpiece, but this does work with other ones as well. But the other difference here is you may have spotted we've got some faceplates over there in the corner, and that is because it has removable faceplates, and depending on the color, depends on the type of gates you're going to get. So the purple colorway has circular gates just here, whereas the tealy blue has octagonal gates. And yes, they are removable, so you can pop these out so that you can change the colors if you don't want to rock all blue for octagonal or all purple for circular. So you can do that as well. And yes, on both of these, we've got anti-friction rings just here, which make them super smooth on the MOBAPAD. And on the QRD, yes, it's got anti-friction rings just here, but the actual joysticks don't have anti-friction ring like metal piece. So it's just plastic on plastic. Whereas on the MOBAPAD, if you look at this, it does have a really nice metal piece just there to really make sure that there's no friction. And on this one as well, you can remove the sticks and change them over, whereas on the QRD, you cannot do that. And just to show you, yes, you can remove the faceplates like this and then stick on the other one if you want like the hexagonal gate. So it gives you a hexagonal gate for fighting games or anything like that if you so want it. It acts more like a D-pad input. It's way more precise to get a precise direction. But for me personally, I generally just use a nice circular gate just like that. So that's the specs out of the way. Let's have a look at the design. So the designs here, I mean, I've said this before, but the QRD T3s pretty much are very, very similar, if not exactly the same as stuff we've seen from Nixie, Doyoki, and Binbok. So I'm thinking they're all made in the same place, just, you know, slightly different. So they all have very slightly different designs depending on the actual brand. Whereas the MOBAPADs are completely unique. Only the MOBAPADs look like this and feel like this. Yes, they look a little bit like Hori split pad compacts, but they are not the same at all. They are totally different. But yeah, so the design wise, they are very different. You can see that the QRD just here has a much longer, larger horn, so it's quite sort of deep with a big swoopy curve on the back, whereas the MOBAPADs are just like fat. Do you know what I mean? They are dinky and wide, but I really find these comfortable. So the MOBAPADs I really find comfortable. It sits in your hand like perfectly. That big cup just there really lets your hand like sit in there really nicely. And I've got medium-sized hands, and I find this just super ergonomic. You've got a really nice sort of bit of distance between where your palm sits and your thumb rests, so they are way more ergonomic than the traditional Joy-Cons. And the same can be said with the QRD. You know, you've got this big horn on the back there, it seats perfectly in the palm of your hands, and you get a really nice grip on this joystick, so there's no issue with ergonomics there. But of course, these are larger, so you might find that these are a bit more comfortable if you've got super big hands. But saying that, because this is fatter, it still really gives you a good grip on the MOBAPADs. I personally prefer the MOBAPAD design and grip. Now, it's not even just the ergonomics that I prefer them aesthetically, because with the MOBAPADs, as you can see here, let's have a quick look at the buttons. So on the MOBAPADs, we've got the traditional face buttons here, we've got the plus button at the top, we then have the home button and the settings button, and that's it. That's it. Then we've got the, R and ZR, and then we've got the back paddle, and that's it. There's no USB or anything on these. It is straight up what it is, and all the features and everything come from different button combinations and clicks with the settings button, and that is it. These charge on the Switch only. You can't charge them independently, and firmware updates can be done via the app. Yes, the MOBAPADs have an app. I forgot to say that in the spec readout, but yeah, you can actually put these on the app, download firmware upgrades, and do loads of stuff on there, like looking at macros and checking the sticks and all that good stuff. Whereas the QRDs do not. The QRDs have buttons everywhere, so we've got the extra turbo button down here, so that's similar, on the face compared to the cog one. However, if we turn it over, we've now got buttons, like extra buttons. We've got a macro button here, and we've also got a rumble button there, and then we've got USB-C on the bottom of each of these as well. So they're just a bit more cluttered. There's more like things you have to do. You have to like flip them over and press stuff to change stuff, whereas on the MOBAPAD, everything can be done just via this button. I prefer aesthetically like the cleaner design of the MOBAPADs, and also again, I don't care for RGB. I really don't. I'd rather have the extra battery life, so 15 hours versus 6.5. That's a win for me, because these are functional over like trying to look fancy. So I've already said they both have mechanical switches in the face buttons, which is great. I love mechanical switches. Go and check out my reviews of both of these if you want to know more, but basically they're super quick to actuate. They have a much larger lifespan compared to standard like membrane buttons. So membrane buttons that you find in normal controllers have about a 1 million click lifespan before they degrade. These, with mechanical switches, these are both like not specified. So the HD versions, these ones actually have Omron switches in them, in everything, right? And these are super good, 10 million click lifespan, amazing. Whereas these, at least in the MOBAPAD M6 S, have a 5 million click lifespan, so they're using like lesser models. And I imagine there's no like, they don't even give you an estimate on these or the brand or anything, but I imagine these would be about that 5 million click lifespan as well. So they both pretty much feel very, very similar. I would say the MOBAPADs have very slight, very slight pre-travel, like just a little bit of pre-travel, as opposed to the QRD just here. These are a bit more like, there's basically no pre or post travel, whereas with the MOBAPADs there's just a little bit of pre-travel, but very minor. However, I do prefer the feel of the MOBAPADs. Like they actually just feel nicer. It might just be the buttons, because they're a bit smaller, and they've got the actual, the face buttons just here are like domed, and the buttons are just printed on, whereas these are like pushed into the mold, and you can feel that. I don't know which I prefer. This is purely subjective, by the way. Like you might prefer these, but I think I prefer the slightly smaller buttons. They just feel a little bit more accurate, maybe because they're smaller. I don't know. It's hard to describe, right? But if you don't know, mechanical switches make a noise. So because it's like a mouse click, membrane switches don't really make a sound. So I've got the Nixie Hyperion Pros just here. Listen to these first. These are membrane. Now the QRDs. Now the MOBAPADs. So there you go, you can hear they're all clicky. And the same can be said for the triggers and the bumpers. Now, with the MOBAPADs, there is slight pre-travel here, like quite a bit of pre-travel and a little bit of post-travel on my models at least for the bumpers, but not on the triggers. On the bumpers and the triggers on the QRD, they are instant. There's no pre or post travel. It's just straight away, and they actuate all over as well. Really nice, like that. These do rattle. If you listen, a lot of rattle, whereas the MOBAPADs, tiny bit of rattle. So little bit of rattle versus a lot. With the back paddles, you know, they both feel good. They both feel good. You've got a much larger back paddle on those than these. With the MOBAPAD, they sit nicely under my middle finger just here. And the same can be said with the QRD, that, you know, they're big paddles, so where your finger rests is good. I like both of them. So I'm not going to go over the turbo, the macro and all that stuff, because I've done it in my independent reviews. If you want to see like an in-depth video on how to use these, I do that in my reviews. So go and check out the independent reviews of these. This is more of like a comparison against feel and stuff like that, and the differences that they have. And one big difference is the D-pad. So the QRD, I said this in my review, it's mushy. I don't really like it. And it's incredibly difficult to swap over the standard D-pad to this one. I actually had to use a knife in my review to get this out so that I could put the dome in. It's not very nice. Whereas with the MOBAPAD, you know, it's a lot nicer. It protrudes more, it clicks around, it's really nice, it rolls lovely. Like, this is a really nice D-pad, I like this a lot. And you can just pull this out like so, and then put the new one in. And this one actually has a notch on the side just there, so that you put it in with a notch facing left, click it down, and now that's lovely. Like, that is such a nice D-pad, and so's it with the dome as well. Really nice, like miles better. And because it's got that little like cut out piece on the left, I didn't need to use a knife. Now with this, it's got like a little arrow facing down, face the arrow down, done. And yeah, so both feel really nice. I like the D-pad, like it's just hands down winner on the MOBAPAD. Now the other thing is, with the MOBAPAD, they are super stiff, but it's actually a feature. So originally in my first like look at these, I was like, oh, there's too stiff, blah, blah, blah. But they've done it on purpose to make sure that it is locked in there. Like this, look at this. Like, there is no wiggle whatsoever from the Joy-Con to the Switch. Like, that does not move. Like, that is locked in there. It's very secure. And also, this is what this looks like with the MOBAPADs attached. You know, they fit nicely on here. Really like the look of them. Again, really nice and ergonomic. I like these a lot. Like, I really like their sort of personalized, customized shell that they've made. Unique is what I'm trying to say. These are unique to the MOBAPADs. Only the MOBAPADs have this design, and that's really nice. So these just slide on really easily. However, there is a bit of an issue here because these wiggle. Like, there is a lot of wiggle there, and you can feel the movement if you do this, you know. So if you're not overly fussed and you're just lightly gripping it, it's fine, but just know there is a bit of wiggle on the rail there, as opposed to no wiggle at all with the MOBAPADs. Both of these have standard rumble, but I would say the rumble is way nicer on the MOBAPADs. These, the QRD, have a very like high-pitched, tinny zzz kind of feel to it, whereas the MOBAPADs have a really nice, low, deep, sort of wide rumble. It's much nicer on the MOBAPADs, in my opinion. And I found with the QRD, they were not consistent. So my left Joy-Con was way more like tinny and rattly compared to the right one in terms of the rumble. And there's like 4 stages and off on the QRD, whereas I'm pretty sure with the MOBAPAD it's just on or off. And I much prefer the rumble with the MOBAPAD. It's just hands down better. But of course, don't forget, we also have the MOBAPAD M6 HD, which actually has HD rumble. We've got loads of videos on these on the channel, so check these out. These are like the king, top dogs, these ones. And the M6 S just here are like the little brothers of them. And, you know, they're great. They're both really good. But that's pretty much everything compared. So I think you have seen that I prefer the MOBAPADs, right? So for me, the MOBAPADs are better. I would personally go out and purchase the MOBAPAD M6 S over these. But of course, if you've got the extra money and money's no object, obviously get the M6 HDs, because they are the best Joy-Cons you can buy on the market right now. But these are really good as well. The only difference between these and the HDs is the HDs have Omron switches, so branded switches. The HDs have 2 hours more battery life, so these have 17 hours as opposed to 15 hours. And of course, these have HD rumble and these have standard rumble, but the rumble is still nice on the M6 S. So that leads us on to price. So the QRD T5s and the T3s, because they're exactly the same, it's just aesthetically different, come in at $58.50, so let's say $60, whereas the MOBAPAD M6 S comes in at $49.99, $50. So these are $10 less, and they are better in my opinion. You've got better joysticks in my opinion because you've got that nice anti-friction ring there, and the joysticks are actually way nicer, a bit more firmer. The rubber top cap is way nicer as well, and you've got that optional gates, so you can have the octagonal gate or the circular gate. They're customizable, much better D-pad, much nicer rumble, and that's pretty much the main differences, but I prefer the feel and the aesthetics of these as well. So yeah, they're $10 less, and in my opinion, they are better. So which ones do I recommend? Obviously the MOBAPADs. Now we've probably got links to buy both of these down in the comments. If you'd prefer to get the QRDs, then you'll find a link down there. If you prefer to get the MOBAPADs, you'll find a link down there as well. But let me know your thoughts. Which do you find better? Do you prefer the MOBAPADs or the QRDs? Do you have any opinions on both? Or, you know, I don't know, just let me know. And don't forget, whilst you're down there, like this video, subscribe as well. And we do have memberships as well. Memberships are open. All tiered members get to see our videos early, sometimes up to a week early as well, if not at least a few days. So, you know, consider supporting the channel. We'd really love that. Thank you. And check out mine and AJ's podcast over here where we talk about all things gaming, and check out another video from me. Actually, no, go and check out the, you know, respective videos. You can check out the QRD video over here for more information, or you can find the MOBAPAD video down here for more information on those as well. Bye.